One thing we discussed about ionic bond is that it is in the cases where we have high electronegativity difference. Now we will see covalent bonds today. Covalent bonds are observed when you have less electronegativity difference. Okay, so covalent bonds, they are formed by sharing of electrons, thereby or noble gas configuration. Okay, what are the conditions that favor covalent bond to happen? One thing, as I told you, that the electronegativity difference, that is, electronegativity difference should be less. Less as in at least less by 1.7 units. Okay, and electronegativity of non-metallic elements are favored. That means elements which are more non-metallic are usually favored here. Okay, valence electrons in this element should be 4, 5, 6, 7 and so on. For instance, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine. They would usually show a lot of covalent character. Okay, so if I classify covalent bonds, the first thing that can be classified is on the basis of polarity. Covalent bonds can be decided on the basis of polarity. That means whether in nature they are non-polar or they are polar. So if they have non-polar, if there are non-polar, then we usually call they have non-polar bonds. Okay. In short, the overall dipole moment, we'll be studying about dipole moment slowly, but remember it that way, that the overall dipole moment of the molecules must be zero. These are all few compounds whose dipole moments is zero. Polar compounds like H2O, NH3, alcohols, okay, HCl, these are all the compounds whose dipole moment is non-zero. Okay, what is dipole moment we'll be learning in a short while. So this is one classification. The next classification is on the basis of number of shared electrons between elements. Okay, if there are two electrons being shared between two elements, we designate that as single bond. Okay, for example, between carbon and carbon, if there is one bond written, that means it is single bond. If there are 4 electrons being shared, we call it as double bond. Okay, when carbon has double bond like this is a representation, and when there are 6 electrons being shared, you call it as triple bond. See, triple bond, see, this is how we write it. This is the other classification. Okay, the third classification is type of overlapping. What is the type of overlapping between the atoms or between the elements? Okay, if it is head-on overlapping, also known as end-to-end overlapping, we call the type of bond as sigma bond. This is called as sigma bond. And if it is sideways or lateral overlapping, we call it as pi bond, presented as this. Okay, these are the three important classifications we got to understand. One is on the basis of polarity, one on the basis of number of shared electrons, the third one is on the basis of the type of bonds which are happening. Okay, all right, what are the objectives we'll be learning in this? Okay, let me mention few questions. One thing we'll be learning is what are the properties of covalent bonds. This is the first thing we will learn. Okay, what is coordinate covalent bond? We shall learn how are electrons shared between the atoms in a molecule. How are shapes of molecules derived how does overlapping of electron cloud takes place. Okay, what are the bond properties of covalent bonds? Okay, these are the main objectives in this covalent bond chapter. Okay, got it. Okay, so when I say properties, I'll be mostly emphasizing on, okay, what is the physical state, okay, types of interactions, and so on. This is the major type. Coordinate covalent bond is a special type of bonding. Okay, that is what we'll be discussing. Next, how are molecules shared between the electrons? For this, we learn what is the Lewis dot structure representation. Okay, also some terms like formal charge helps a lot. Next, how was the shapes defined? We learn it by VS-EPR theory. Okay, and also hybridization. And this part, how the overlapping is done, we learn it by VBT, molecular orbital theory, hybridization, and so on. Bond properties was in bond angle, bond length, bond order, and bond energy. Okay, along with that, we learn about type of. Start with the first thing, which is the properties of covalent compounds. Okay, so what are the various properties of covalent molecules? First one is the physical state. Now, usually covalent molecules, when they generally exist in gaseous or liquid state. We will not see much of a solid state because if they have such strong bonding, they might be possibly having ionic bonds. Okay. It's not that we don't have it, but most of the time we'll see gaseous and liquids, right? So between the particles, between the covalent molecules, we have van der Waal attractive forces existing. Okay. So if the van der Waal attractive forces are very strong, then only we see it might have solid state existing, otherwise it would be in liquid or gaseous state. Okay. Usually what we need to learn is that van der Waal attractive forces increases with increasing surface area of particle, surface area of molecule. Okay. For example, if you take about gases, okay, you will see fluorine, chlorine, nitrogen, oxygen, hydrogen. These are all molecules which exist in gaseous state. On the other hand, if you see liquids, Br2, CCl4, CHCl3, CS2, they all exist in liquid state. Okay. Now you could anticipate that the surface area occupied by these molecules is increasing. So as the surface area is increasing, possibly they will have much stronger interaction, hence they are existing in liquid state. If the surface area increase further, then we'll have solid covalent molecules like I2, P4, S8, graphite, okay, diamond. These are all the molecules whose surface area is very large. Okay. Well, diamond and graphite are like the special cases because they would have covalent as well as bond interactions as well as molecular interactions. So other than that, if you see I2, P4, S8, they all exist in solid state at room temperature. So it suggests that they might have a very large surface area. That's why it is happening so. Is that clear? Right? So what are the types of solids we usually see when there are interactions here? What are the types of solids we see? First type of solids we see are ionic solids. Okay, ionic solids do form when we have cation and anion present, positive and negative charges present, which leads to form crystal lattice. Okay, example for the same are NaCl, CaCl2, ZnS, CaF2, Na2O, MgO. These are all the covalent molecules and they'll exist as crystals and we call them as ionic crystals. Then we have metallic solids. Metallic solids as in metal atoms in groups. Okay, like silver, cadmium, copper, okay, gold. Now the interaction between them, between the atoms, will lead to something called metallic bonds, and hence they'll form as metallic solids. The third type of interactions to form solids are molecular solids. Molecular solids, as in we just saw that molecules having van der Waal interactions. Okay, in the case of I2, okay, we saw how we have P4 or graphite. These are all the cases where we call them as molecular solids. I think the type of solids are clear. Okay, so this part of molecular solid is very, very important for us because we are talking mostly about these molecular solids. Okay, so this would usually see when one atom combines with another atom through covalent bonds, and many such molecules are bound to each other in solid state, okay, with the help of van der Waal forces of attraction, or a special type of van der Waal attraction is known as hydrogen bonding, or hydrogen bonding are called molecular solids. So this is the special type of solids we are more concerned about. Okay, any doubt here, guys? Okay, now since I'm talking about molecular solids, okay, check this. I would strictly not consider graphite as one of the molecular solids. Now, why I don't consider it, let me tell you. This molecular solid is further divided into another category known as covalent solids. Covalent solids are known as network solids. Okay, covalent solids are network solids. Now, what is the difference between this molecular solids and here is, okay, in this every atom is bound by only covalent bonds. Okay, there are only covalent bonds throughout, right? And you would see it is completing octet, you know, and another way of writing is every atom comprises of 4 covalent bonds and forms a matrix of networking bonds. When this kind of thing exists, you call them as covalent solids. Okay, now this results in formation of giant molecule. Like diamond is called as a giant molecule. Got it? For instance, if we check out diamond, we will see it would always have bonds continuously existing like this, and you can see at least every carbon would have 4 bonds existing. Got it? Now this way the chain keeps running. Okay, I hope you got this. This is how the structure of diamond would be. So every carbon has 4 bonds, and that is the structure which is running around. Now if you see silica also has a similar structure where it is connected by oxygen like this, and another silicon, oxygen, silicon, oxygen, oxygen, silicon, oxygen. So you can see that every silicon is connected to oxygen this way, forming a network bonding. So few important examples you must remember, guys, is that diamond, diamond, SiO2, which is silica structure, okay, ALN, aluminum nitride, SiC, also known as corundum, okay, sorry, carborundum, is known as carborundum. And these are few examples of, network solids. Graphite is a mixture of both, graphite is mixture of network plus molecular solid. So it would have a network on layers and molecular on second layer, got it? So that way it is being distributed. As we go towards group 14, we'll be discussing more in detail about how the graphite structure, diamond structure looks like. As of now, our objective is to only distinguish the types. Have you guys understood this, right? So the first thing we have learned is the physical state and what are the types of solids in this. Okay. Second thing we'll learn is about melting point and boiling point. Unlike ionic bonds, where they are completely going to spread throughout the molecule, here between the atoms it is covalent bond, but between the molecules it is van der Waal interaction. Hence, the melting point and boiling point are not as strong as that of ionic bonds. Okay, except covalent solids. Okay, other covalent compounds in general have low melting and boiling point due to weak van der Waal forces. You guys understood that? Okay, so in general that is the case, that melting point and boiling point are quite weak in it. Okay. Third, we'll see conduction of heat and electricity. In ionic compounds, we saw that in solid state they don't conduct, but in liquid state, molten state, they are highly conducting. Okay, so unlike here, covalent compounds are bad conductors of heat and electricity, except graphite. Generally they are very bad conductors of electricity. Correct. Now in the liquid state, if they are polar covalent compounds in liquid state are good conductors of electricity. When I say liquid state, it is only pertaining to aqueous form, not molten form, aqueous form. What I meant to say, suppose if you take HCl, HCl is a polar covalent molecule. The minute you add it to water, it will form into aqueous ions. And once you have ions, they will be conducting in liquid. Okay, so that's how they will conduct electricity. Okay. Fourth important aspect is solubility. Okay. Generally, you will see covalent compounds in general are soluble in non-polar solvents, because we'll always have the perception that when we have covalent compounds, they may not have a lot of dipole moment. Okay, for example, if you see bromine, CCl4, CHCl3, CH3Cl, CS2, benzene, toluene, okay, esters. These are all the compounds which are usually represented as non-polar compounds. Okay, so in non-polar compounds, usually covalent compounds are more soluble. But again, here it depends upon what you are adding. Suppose if you are adding any non-polar compound to these solvents, they will definitely get easily dissolved. But if you add a polar covalent compound, they would prefer to be more soluble in polar compounds. And you have learned this as a saying that like dissolves in like and dislike dissolves in dislike. So if it comes to polar covalent compounds are soluble in polar solvents. For example, HCl is more soluble in H2O. Okay, why? H2O is polar, correct? Because this is polar, while HCl is less soluble or least soluble in benzene. And reason for the same being, benzene is completely non-polar. Okay, so that is the usual trend. You will see that like dissolves in like. Okay, if you see the difference between ionic and covalent compounds, one of the important differences is direction in nature. Directional in nature. So if you compare ionic compounds, they are non-directional, but covalent compounds are highly directional. Okay, what do you mean by directional? They showcase those showcase specific geometry or arrangement in space. Hey guys, have you understood this? Right? So that's the way it is to be understood about properties of covalent compounds. Okay. The second aspect which we will see, okay, so far I think we have studied about the first aspect, that is properties of covalent molecules. The second aspect is, you know, how the type of bonding is happening, that is sharing of electrons, how the sharing of electrons take place. At the start of the chapter only, if you just recall here, when we started, got it, we learned something called Lewis dot representation here. You can see this, right? This is the Lewis dot representation. This Lewis dot representation is something which will be very useful for us here to showcase the bonding type, how the bonding is happening. Okay. So if you take any Lewis dot structures, it would be easy for us to showcase how the actual bonding is happening. Let me show with few examples. Suppose if at all there is a molecule H2 molecule. There are two ways you can show. One is only dot way or dot and cross way. So let me show both. H, if one H has one valence electron here, the other H has one more valence electron. If both of them share electrons this way, okay, and if you see their vicinity, like this is the vicinity of hydrogen now, and this is the vicinity of other hydrogen, right? Now this can be represented as H single bond H. You can see that there are two electrons being shared. Two electron sharing is one single bond, okay, and this pair of electron which has been shared. So this pair of electrons which has been shared, that is called shared pair of electron. Shared pair of electron, or also known as bonded pair. We will be using this terminology a lot. Okay, BP, that is bonded pair. Okay. Similarly, if you see F2 molecule now, in F2 molecule, based on the dot and dot product, you will see there are 7 unpaired electrons here. So you can see that there are 7 unpaired electrons plus another F, which also has 7 unpaired electrons. If they combine with each other, they will share 1 electron each this way. And if you see the vicinity of each fluorine, if this is the vicinity of one fluorine, this would be the vicinity of the other fluorine, and it can be implied that F and F has one single bond, and there are 3 pairs on left hand side and 3 pairs on right hand side. And these pairs, if you see, this was the bonded pair, and now if you see these pairs, got it? These are the pairs which are not participating in the bonding, hence they are called lone pairs. Okay, so F2 molecule has 6 lone pairs. Have you guys got this? Okay. The other term for the lone pairs is an unshared electron pairs. Got it? So either you can call it as a lone pair or unshared electron pairs. So there is one bonded pair. You can see this is the bonded pair. So bonded pair. So one bonded pair and 6 lone pairs are present in F2 molecule. If you talk about HF or HCl molecule, which is quite similar. Now here H dot and F dot can be used this way to showcase that there is a bonding between hydrogen and fluorine still have 6 electrons left on it. So you can see that hydrogen has 2 electrons, fluorine has 8 electrons in it, and this is how the bond is happening, showcasing that there is a single bond existing between H and F, with fluorine still carrying 3 lone pairs. So this one is a bonded pair, and there are still 3 lone pairs on fluorine. Right guys? So from now onwards, I will showcase this way that HF has 1 BP as in bonded pair, and it has 1 BP and 3 lone pairs. Okay. Similarly, if you see O2 molecule will have 6 electrons this way and 6 electrons this way in the Lewis dot structure. Oxygen will share electrons this way and showcase these oxygens are getting overlapped. So from here, if you see the bond line form, this is O2 molecule, and in the O2 molecule this has 2 lone pairs, this has 2 lone pairs. So hence there are 2 bond pairs and 4 lone pairs in this molecule. I hope you guys can relate that. Last one, you can see N2 molecule. In N2 molecule, nitrogen, which has 5 electrons in the valence shell orbit, will start sharing 3 electrons between them and 1 lone pair away. That way it would have this part of one nitrogen and this part of the other nitrogen, showcasing in the bond line form it has 3 bond pairs. That means it has a triple bond. So if it is a triple bond, I can say it has 3 bond pairs and 2 lone pairs. So this is a representation of N2 molecule. So now one thing we got to understand from here is that in all of these cases, if you see, hydrogen is every hydrogen here is trying to complete its duplet form. This is called the duplet form because hydrogen usually does not have second shell, so it is happy with first orbit getting completely filled, which is 2 electrons. While fluorine, if you check out, both fluorines are making an octet completion. That means within its vicinity there are 8 electrons. Same is the case with this fluorine. In this vicinity it has 8 electrons. Same is the case with oxygen if you see. So this oxygen is also fulfilling 8 electron systems in its vicinity, and this oxygen is also completing its 8 electron system in its vicinity. So it is completing its octet. So is the case of nitrogen here. So the number of electrons sharing between the atom depends upon, in which permutation it can actually get octet completion. Okay. So the important criteria in all of this bonding is whether there is an octet configured or not. Octet configured. Octet configured atom should be present. Okay. Correct. So this is called the octet rule as well. So Lewis octet rule suggests that every atom, while making a covalent bond or ionic bond, must fulfill its octet. Only in the case of hydrogen and helium, okay, or lithium, they are very small in size. So they are more close towards the first orbit configuration. So they will try to take the helium configuration, which is a duplet. Hey guys, you understood that, right? Okay. So basic type of bonding, how the Lewis dot structure is working is clear, right? Okay. So some books may also give the Lewis structure in the form of dot and cross. Like if I take HCl molecule, they will represent one atom in the form of dot and the other atom in the form of cross, just to showcase that, which atoms are exactly getting bonded, just to have a little bit more clarity on the types of atoms. That's all. Okay. Like this is bonding like this. Okay. It's not going to make much of a difference, but this type of a representation is more helpful when you have lot of atoms present, like in the case of H2SO4. Okay. So then this cross works better. Okay. So otherwise it is absolutely fine. Any doubt here? Okay. See. So we have learned 2 things so far. If you check out the list on which we are starting with, so we have learned all the physical type of interactions, right? Then how does the Lewis dot structure works? Next thing we learn about is the special type of bonding, which is coordinate covalent bonding. Okay. So let me showcase how the coordinate covalent bonding works. Coordinate covalent bonds. Okay. In this, what is happening? It's a special type of covalent bond where, okay, covalent bond is formed. Covalent bond is formed, okay, when shared electrons are contributed by one atom only. So instead of 2 atoms being sharing, only 1 atom is sharing. In that case, this would usually happen. Suppose if at all I have an element A which has 6 electrons and I have B which has 8 electrons. Now to make sure both of them are retaining or attaining octet configuration, it is more feasible, it is more appropriate for this B to donate or rather share these electrons with A, so that A can be satisfied, at the same time B can also be satisfied its octet. So that means this would be more valid when A and B, between them, electrons are being shared. Okay. Then you can see that now A is fulfilling its octet, B is also fulfilling its octet. So this also has 8 electron system. Okay. At the same time, B also has an 8 electron system. So this way both of them are fulfilling their octet configuration. Alright. In the bond line form, how to represent this? If you check out, we should represent it this way, that A is getting help from B. Its electrons are intact. B electrons are intact. One pair is being shared only from B. This is the way to represent. This is the bond representation. Okay. Or the same can also be represented as if A has gained 1 electron and B has lost 1 electron. Hence, A is getting negative charge. Okay. So it has gained 1 electron, B has lost 1 electron, and rest all electrons of B are intact. Watch this carefully, correct? So here also you can see that octet is been, we can show this as an octet completion of A and this is octet completion of B. Okay. Now here what happened, B initially has lost electron to A, imagine it that way. So that means A must have gained one electron, so it is showing that extra negative on its surface. B has lost its electron, so it is showing extra positive on its surface, and both of them are sharing one electron each. That's how a bond is forming. Okay, hence I can say that again the octet of A is complete here. So A is completed its octet. At the same time, B has also completed its octet. So because that is also showing 8 electronic system. So this is the way you can show that both A and B are completing their octet. Okay. So for instance, if we have few examples, we'll check out on few worked out examples that will give us more clarity. Okay. Suppose if you have to draw ozone, O3. Okay. Ozone does have a coordinate covalent bond. So let me show how it looks like. So ozone actual structure would be oxygen, double bond O, and bond like this. This is actually the bond line structure. Now let me split this into the octet Lewis structure. So that means oxygen has 2 lone pairs, the left one, and then there are 2 electrons being shared with the central oxygen, and that has 1 lone pair, and the other lone pair is being shared by the same oxygen to other oxygen which already has 6 electrons of its own. Now if you see carefully, so this oxygen of the left hand side and the center oxygen, both of them have shared 2 electrons each and they are fulfilling their octet. But the central oxygen with the right hand oxygen is sharing electrons, but the terminal right side oxygen is not sharing any electron. Hence there is a coordinate covalent bond existing between the second and third oxygen. So if I take this as first, second and third oxygen, first, second and third oxygen, you can see second and third oxygen has a coordinate covalent bond. Okay. Hence that is the reason why this is the representation. And as I said, the same representation O double bond O with dative bond with this coordinate covalent bond showcasing the lone pairs also. You can see this is the lone pairs and this is how it is looking like. Now I can show this arrow as, okay, bond line form also as pure covalent bond like this, with this showing positive, left of the lone pairs are same, and this showing negative. This is another way of showing it. Okay. So this representation is something which we will be using a lot. Okay. Now the charges which I have written on these elements, right? Okay. The charges which I have written in these elements, these are what we call it as formal charges. These are not actual charges. This is not like ionic charge. Okay. This is a hypothetical charge which will give to the elements showcasing their bonds. Got it? I hope all of you understood that. So what we have learned here, important thing what we need to note is, okay, in a coordinate covalent bond, okay, if B donates a lone pair, then A accepts a lone pair. So ultimately this is what is happening if at all B is donating it to A, correct? This is how it is happening. Okay. When this type of bonding happens, okay, the donating species is called Lewis base. This is called Lewis base, and the accepting species is called Lewis acid. Okay. So the bond formation between them is nothing but an acid base bond formation. Got it? So this is something you got to understand, that the donating species is always called as the Lewis base, the accepting species is always called as the Lewis acid. So it is like an acid base reaction that is happening between them, and that acid base reaction is happening by bond formation. Okay. The second thing we got to note is that coordinate covalent bond is also termed as dative bond. So we do call it as a dative bond. Guys, you understood that? Okay. Very important information. Learn coordinate covalent bonds properly. Okay. Even every small bit and piece is important in this. Let me take more examples. Suppose if you have NH4 plus, it's another example. This is a molecule. Now in here what is happening? Nitrogen has 5 valence electrons. Then there are 3 hydrogens which has 1 electron on it, and then there is a hydrogen plus, that means it has no electron on it. This is how they have been combined. So when this combination happens, so nitrogen will share 1 electron with 1 hydrogen here, 1 hydrogen here, one hydrogen here, and it has a lone pair. That lone pair is being shared with H plus, and this gives rise to the formation of N, H, 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 and a dative bond with another H plus. Okay, right? This is how it is. Now, if this dative bond I have to showcase in terms of covalent bonds, how can I write N, H, 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 and also single line, right? That arrow I can write it as a dash, and I write it as H, and I'll give this as plus and H as minus, but H already has a plus, so plus minus will become 0. So this will be the new representation. Understood? So NH4 Lewis structure, if it is given, both these structure representation are correct. This is in a dative bond style, this is in a complete covalent bond style. Okay. Sorry. I hope that is clear. Let me show another type of example. Carbon monoxide. In carbon monoxide, we have carbon with 4 single electrons and oxygen, which would have electrons this way. I can showcase here, since it is morely about dative bond, I can showcase like this. And imagine these two getting bonded. So carbon will try to share 2 electrons, and thereby oxygen will try to fulfill its octet. So if you see, oxygen has completed its octet, but carbon still has only 6 electrons. So this is not a right Lewis structure. Okay. Hence, the other type which we can do in this is carbon sharing 3 electrons, oxygen sharing 3 electrons like this, correct? And carbon has 2 electrons, oxygen has 2 electrons. Now this makes a more valid form here, like this, correct? But unfortunately, if you count the number of carbon atoms, there are only 4, right? Okay. Here I am showing it as 5. That means this electron must be of oxygen only. Okay. So you can see that this is a coordinate covalent bond, this is a covalent bond, this is a covalent bond. Okay. So if I show that in a bond line form, okay, it is actually C double bond O, and then there is an arrow towards carbon with one lone pair on this side and one lone pair on this side. Right, guys? The same thing, if at all I represent in terms of their coordinate bond, covalent bond, I can write that as C triple bond O, with this getting minus charge and this getting plus charge. So carbon monoxide structure is very, very important. You must know how to write that. Is that clear, guys? Have you understood this, everyone? Right? Okay. We'll take one more example. Suppose if you have BF3 molecule already present, and then there is NH3 molecule, these two can also make a bonding here where nitrogen already has an octet completion with 3 bond pairs and 1 lone pair. Boron, on the other hand, only has 3 bond pairs and an empty orbital. Its octet is incomplete. So the lone pair from nitrogen can actually be donated here, and that makes a coordinate covalent bond or a dative bond, something like this. F, 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 nitrogen we have H, H, and H. So this is the bonding which you will have. This is writing in dative style. If you write it in purely covalent style, how do we write down that? H, 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 B, F, F, and F here. Since boron has gained an electron, it will get minus charge. Nitrogen has lost an electron, it will get plus charge. So this is a representation. Guys, you understood this, right? So this is about coordinate covalent bond. This part is very important, how to write the dative bonds. Okay. Now, next important task we should do is about drawing the Lewis structures. Drawing Lewis structures in case of covalent compounds. Earlier we have written in ionic compounds. Now we'll see how to write the Lewis structures in covalent compounds. Okay. For this we can follow simple rules which would help us to, make sure that minimum algorithm is clear. The first thing we have to do is write a symmetrical skeleton of molecule. Write a symmetrical skeleton of molecule or ion. Okay. So this is more important form, right? So within that, there is one rule we need to check out, is that least electronegative element, okay, usually takes as central element position. Okay. For example, if you have carbon dioxide, in carbon dioxide you'll have C, O, and O. Okay. If you have sulfur dioxide or sulfur trioxide, then we'll be writing that as S, O, and O, like this. Okay. Achha, well, I don't have to showcase the bonds here, okay, but you got to understand this is the skeleton which you have to write. Okay, well, there are few cases where more electronegative element will be central atom, like in the case of H2O. Here oxygen is at the center and hydrogens are far away because there is no other alternative. Okay, but other than that, if nothing much of an information given, we'll always write less electronegative element as the central atom. Next, usually oxygen atoms does not form chains in multiple oxygen compounds. Okay, what I meant to say, suppose if at all I have PO4 3 minus, then you must understand that this oxygen may not be touching each other, they are separated. Okay, like if at all I have SO4 2 minus, that means sulfur is here, 4 oxygens are here. If it is SO3, like I showed you earlier, S, O, O and O. Oxygen-oxygen bond is normally not seen. Okay, oxygen-oxygen bond is only seen in the case of O2, where you will have OO connection, O3, where you will have OOO connection like this. Otherwise, in majority of the multi-oxygen compounds, they will be separated only. Okay. And the third rule, within this rule, the third thing we need to check out is hydrogen atom bond to oxygen atom and not to central atom in most cases. Okay, except very few, you will see hydrogen is always bonded to oxygen only. Suppose if at all I have to write the skeleton of HNO3, so that means I'll have N, O, O, O and H somewhere outside trying to bond with oxygen. Okay, so if at all I have H3PO4, that means it is P, O, 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 O with 3 hydrogens bonding at 3 oxygens. Okay, H2SiO4, sorry, H4SiO4, that means it has silicon O, 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 O and H, 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 H. This is how the bonding goes. So structurally you got to see this. This is how the bonding usually appears. Any doubt, guys? Okay. So within the skeleton, the last rule you got to take care is that if you have poly-centered species, draw the symmetrical skeleton. For instance, if you have C2H6, so there are 2 centers and try to distribute 3 hydrogens equally like this. Okay, so that means possibly there is a bond here, 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 there might be a bond here, here, here and here like this. Correct? So I'm trying to keep as much symmetrical as possible. I think the first rule is clear, how to write the skeleton. Right. The second rule in writing Lewis structures is about calculating the number of electrons available in the valence shell of all atoms, or in a molecule or ion. Okay, and we usually represent that with V. Alright, this is the first thing we'll do. Next thing is, in case of ions, subtract the charge from total electrons for cations and add the charge to total electrons in anions. Okay, this is rule number 2. What I meant to say, suppose if I take SO4 2 minus, so I'll see that sulfur has 6 valence shell electrons. There are 4 oxygens, they will also have 6 valence electrons plus 2, because it is an anion, I have to add the 2 charge also. So implies V will be equal to 32. V is in total valence electrons available. Got that? Right. So the third rule is calculate the total number of electrons required by the atoms in the molecule to achieve noble gas configuration. That I represented by R. Okay, what it is I'll show you with an example. Let me write the rules first. Okay, next find the number of shared electrons, which I call it as S, and unshared electrons, which I call it as U. Okay, so what relation you will find is S will be equal to, shared electrons will be R minus V. V is the total valence electron, R is the total number of electrons required for atoms to be octet, and U will be equal to V minus S. Okay, this is what you will observe. Okay, total number of bond pairs will be equal to S by 2, and total number of lone pairs will be obviously unpaired number of electrons by 2. These are the pairs. Okay, let me showcase with an example now. Suppose if it is about H2SO4. Let me check what is the V value. V value will be 2 plus 6 plus 4 into 6. Total 32. I think you can figure out, right guys? I don't think there is much of a problem in understanding that. Right. Next, what is R? R as in for every element, what is the nearest octet configuration? For hydrogen it is 2 now. So for every hydrogen we require 2 electrons. Plus sulfur, one sulfur requires 8 electrons. 4 oxygens requires 8 electrons. That is their ideally completing their octet. So therefore, that would be the R value. So ideally for every element, what is the octet completion or duplet completion? That is what you have to write. So that will be the R value. So S will be equal to, that is how many sharing that has to be done, will be revealed by R minus V. Okay, R minus V is nothing but the common electrons, right? That should make sense to you now. When I show the bonding, it will be more clearer. And unpaired electrons will be, okay, total valence electrons minus shared. That remaining will be your unpaired electrons only. Hence, bond pairs will be 6 and lone pairs will be 10. So I think the information is clear, guys. Let me showcase this by, Lewis dot structure. For H2SO4, what we will do? First, we will make sure sulfur is being written here. Then I'll put 4 oxygens here and 2 hydrogens here. So I'm following all the rules, trying to get a symmetrical structure with less electronegative element at the central atom, surrounded by oxygens, surrounded by hydrogens, which are connected to oxygens. Okay. Now, first thing what I'll do, I'll always start with completion of octet for central atom. Got it? So how can I do that? I need to make at least one sharing on either of the side, right? To make a bond, at least I need to make one sharing. Within one pair of sharing with every oxygen, my octet is complete. For sulfur, you can see that the octet is finished. Okay. Now try to finish the octet of the top carbon and the top oxygen, bottom oxygen. So I require 1, 2, and 3 lone pairs. Same I can do here, 1, 2, and 3 lone pairs. That is also done. Again, hydrogen will have one bond with oxygen, so make one bond on this side. So left oxygen and right oxygen both have 4 electrons each, so they require at least 2 lone pairs here. Now can you figure out all the octet is finished? Okay, so see the number of bonded pairs here now. So bonded pair, bonded pair, bonded pair, bonded pair, bonded pair, and bonded pair. So how many bonded pairs we saw? 6, right? That is what we got it. Check out. So how many bonded pairs we got? 6 bonded pairs. Okay, guys. See the number of lone pairs now. Lone pair, lone pair, lone pair, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you can check out, there are 10 lone pairs. Okay. 6 bonded pairs and 10 lone pairs in this. Right, guys? And if you see the Lewis structure wise, sulfur has also completed its octet. Oxygen has completed its octet above. This oxygen has completed its octet. This oxygen has completed its octet. This oxygen has completed its octet. This has completed its duplet. This has completed its duplet. You can see. Right, guys? Okay. Now, let us understand this. Sulfur in generally will have how many electrons on it? 6 electrons, right? Valential electrons. Okay. So it appears like it is sharing only 4 electrons here. Now what I'll do, I'll try to signify the same sulfur electrons differently with cross. Okay. See the same structure, I'm writing it again. Let us try to relate that. Sulfur, if it has cross, I'll write it in cross form. Okay. It has total 6 electrons. So one it is bonding on this side, one it is bonding on this side, and 2 here, correct? This way. The other oxygen which is present here, that may be sharing 1 electron. And the same oxygen is sharing with one more hydrogen electron. Here also it is sharing with one more hydrogen electron, right, guys? That means if this octet has to be complete, this sulfur must be making a dative bond only, right? It can't make a covalent bond, simple covalent bond. It has to make a dative bond. So the other oxygens may not have to share the electrons. Now this is the way you can show the structure now, correct? So if at all I write the bond line form for the same, it is HOSOH, which is this sulfur making a dative bond with oxygen above and below, correct? I hope you guys understood that. Achha, what if at all I have to showcase, by the way, this is the Lewis structure, understood? If at all I write it in a bond line form with purely covalent bonds, so how do I represent that? SO and H with single bond, with single bond oxygen with minus, and this gets 2 plus. Yes or no? So this minus, 2 plus and minus which I have written, these are the formal charges. So as per the Lewis structure rules, if I write H2SO4 structure, what is the formal charge of sulfur? The formal charge of sulfur is plus 2. Okay guys, you understood this? Okay. Now I would want you to try in a similar way, same data, the way I have figured out the data, I want you to work out on PO4 3 minus, NH4 plus, NH4 plus, and this is very, very important, HNO3. These three structures are very important. Please try this now. I'll give you 2 minutes. Please write in a similar way. First calculate VRU. From that you can get S. Write the dot line structure and work it out. Please try that. Okay, so let's see. Okay, let's see what you might have got this here. So V will be equal to 5 plus 4 into 6 plus 3. Right, guys? So 8 plus 24. So that makes it again. Yeah, you can check this. So you have got this right, 4 of it. So from here you can check out how the structure look like. So P, then we have one bond with oxygen above and one bond with oxygen below, one bond with oxygen here, and one bond with oxygen on this side. Okay. So again, if I show this in a dot form, all I can say is that all I can show is that this dot forms here.
What does dot form means?
I'll show you with here. okay, from here, here and here. Imagine that these three are being shared by, okay, if I like the bond line form here, we have O, P, O, O, and then additive bond O here, right guys? But there is an extra electron that is present now in the here, here, as well as here. There is an extra electron present. That extra electron represents that there must have been a minus charge on it. Got this, guys? This is the structure you got, right? Subodh, any doubt? Okay, NH4. I think for NH4 you must have got that V will be equal to 5 plus 4 into 1 minus 1 equal to 8. R would be equal to 4 into 2 plus 8, which is 16. So shared would be 8, unshared is 0. Okay. So that gives us a structure like N, H, H, H and H, and one sharing here, here, here and here. So obviously one has been dative bond. We have just shown that earlier with this NH4 structure. So you know that this is how it is with one dative bond with H. So I can write that as a covalent bond line structure also. So you should be able to find that also. Okay, this is the important part, HNO3. How do you check out on the HNO3 part? Okay. So when it comes to HNO3, you can see that N being the central atom, oxygen, 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 and hydrogen. This is how it is. So if I write the valence shell electrons, this is 1 plus 5 plus 3 into 6. Okay, so it is 24 electrons. So R would be equal to 2 plus 4 into 8. Okay, 8, 32, 34 electrons. Right. So number of shared electrons will be how many? 10. So number of unshared will be how many? 12. This is what you got. Right. Now check this. Nitrogen must be sharing 2 electrons here, 1 pair here and 1 pair here. That is sufficient enough to make it octet completed. So I have spent how many pair of electrons? 8 pair. 8 pair as in 12 electrons I have already spent. Okay. So that means 8 electrons I have already spent on it. So now I have to share 2 electrons here. Sorry, 2 electrons here. That's it. So 10 shared electrons have been done. So the unshared electrons, there are 12 of it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 pairs. So I think 6 pairs are done here as well. Got it? Any doubt on this? No. Okay. Now you can see the problem here is that one of the oxygen is not completing its octet. Okay. So that means this bond must be dative bond. Then only it can be fulfilling its octet. Both of this nitrogen and oxygen. So hence if I write the structure here, so it must be N double bond O and N single bond O H with one dative bond O. This is how it is. Right guys? So this I can write it in a bond line form as H O N double bond O single bond O with minus and plus charge. So remember this when it comes to HNO2 structure, okay, HNO3 structure, this is how it looks like. Done? So please note all of these examples first. So basically in these compounds what you would see, compounds like AlCl3, BF3, BCl2, BH3, correct, BCl3, all of these compounds do have an incomplete octet. So if you see beryllium chloride also, BeCl and Cl. So this has only 4 shared electrons. Okay, so incomplete octet. So this is hence it has an incomplete octet. Okay, so the tendency that AlCl3 plus another AlCl3 trying to form Al2Cl6 is quite high. Same way, BF3 plus BF3 is very difficult to form. This may not happen for XY reasons. I'll tell you what. BCl2 plus BCl2 will do form dimerization to form B2Cl4. Okay, but BCl3 and BCl3 does not form BCl3 does not form a dimer, but BH3 does form a dimer, B2H6. These three are valid. Okay, why they are not valid, as in when the chapter comes I'll discuss. Okay, but as of now, as a problem solving, you will remember which will form dimer and which won't form dimers. Okay, this is the first example of incomplete octet. Second case where the octet rules are not followed, SF6, okay, and ICL5, ICL7 and so on. These are all the molecules. Now these type of molecules are called expanded octet. That means they are expanding their octet value. Okay, So if you see PCl5 for instance, in PCl5 you actually have 5 chlorine bonds. 5 chlorine bonds signifies there are 10 bonded electrons. So it is definitely greater than 8 electron, which is octet rule. So it is overshooting or expanding its octet. Okay. So one thing you got to understand, expanded octet is only valid, is only observed in central atom with empty d orbitals present. Yeah, I'll show you. Right. So PCl5 do exist, but that happens only when you have an empty d orbital present on it. And phosphorus do have an empty d orbital. Let me show the configuration of phosphorus. Right. Phosphorus will have neon up to 10 and then 3s2, 3p3. This is the electronic configuration of phosphorus. But 3d is also present in it, which is empty. Okay. Same way if you see I would have xenon, okay, 6s2 and 6p5. And 5d is completely empty for iodine. Okay. Sorry, 6d. 6d is completely empty for iodine. Okay. So that makes it to have a expanded octet, and thereby giving we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right. These are the chlorines which it will be bonded with. This is how it will have bonded. Okay. So it will show it as ICl7. What hybridization it has, what is the shape it has, that is what something we'll be learning as we go further. Okay. Same way SF6, same thing, sulfur surrounded by 6 fluorines like this. This is also an expanded octet with how many bonded electrons in it? You can see it has 12 bonded electrons. Okay. So all of these are overshooting the octet. And the most important reason for this is empty d orbitals. They must have an empty d orbital. Okay. This also explains the case that why, okay, NCl5, okay, or OF6 and FCl5, FCl7 does not exist. Why they don't exist, I think now you know. Why? Because the central atom here, which is nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, they do not have empty d orbitals. Okay. So second period elements, for example, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, which are the most covalent compounds, never expand their octet. Okay. So they have to strictly follow their octet. Correct. So I can say that these 4 elements has to follow their octet in any of the case. If they are not following, that is like a special case. Just like that what we seen earlier, NO and NO2 are the special cases. Is this clear, guys? So I think the second limitation is also clear. Let us see the third limitation. Okay, this octet, it doesn't explain the formation of odd electron species. Explain the odd electron species. Examples: NO, NO2 and ClO2. So these 3 are most used odd electrons. So these 3 would they will always can't show the octet completion. Other than this, there are inert gases, xenon and krypton, also forming covalent bonds. Okay. Example being krypton F2, xenon F2, XeO3, XeF6, XeF4, XeO2F2, XeOF4. So there are a lot of xenon oxide fluoride compounds. These are all in existence, but unfortunately we can't explain on the basis of Lewis rules, because they already are fulfilled their octet. They already have an octet completion. So why would they actually go for any chemical reaction? Right, guys? So these are the compounds you must be looking out for. Okay. So there are some special cases where we can't decide the structure only by simple skeletons. Let me show those few special cases. If you see H2SO5, this is called peroxysulfuric acid. If you remember this, we discussed in redox reactions, okay, also known as Carrot's acid. The structure for the same would be like this: HOSO, OOH. So there is something called a peroxy linkage. This linkage is called peroxy linkage. So there will be an oxygen present in between them. This is how it exists. Okay. Same way, H2S2O8. You see this? This is peroxy disulfuric acid. Okay, also known as Marshall's acid. This is the common name. So we have come across this linkage here. So peroxy linkage is controlling the two sulfuric acids. That is what is called peroxy disulfuric acid. NCERT also will just go brush up with that. Something known as Sidgwick's concept of singlet linkages. Okay, so what Sidgwick says, well, he says that every atom will try to follow, every molecule will try to follow octet configuration strictly, for that matter PCl5 also. Okay, but what he says, if you check out PCl3, he says for PCl5, first check what is happening with PCl3. Okay, in PCl3 we know the structure will have phosphorus, 3 chlorine linkages and 1 lone pair. That's how it is fulfilling its octet. So oxygen has fulfilled its phosphorus has fulfilled its octet here. So this is perfectly fine. Now what he says, in PCl3, if you see the bond energy of P and Cl, okay, and the amount of energy required to break this, the bond energy, let me call it as X. Just recently we have learned thermodynamics, so you should be able to relate what is bond energy. Okay, so the average bond energy in PCl3 is, let's say, X. Now when we see PCl5, okay, so when we see PCl5, then, and if we expect that there is an existence of single bonds all like this, then the average bond energy between P and Cl here must also be X, correct? But it was not observed to be X in all the bonds. Okay, got it? Then what he said, possibly it might be happening because P will try to follow octet with at least 3 chlorines. With 3 chlorines, it is making pure covalent bond like this. And with the other chlorines, 2 other chlorines, there is only phosphorus which is sharing and not chlorine. Chlorine is not sharing at all. So it is like a coordinate covalent bond. Okay, it is like a coordinate covalent bond. See that it is like a coordinate covalent bond, but with only single electron. Okay, now if you see the octet completion, chlorine is trying to complete the octet like this. Okay, sorry, there is one extra electron. Yeah, fine. Yeah. And here also chlorine is trying to complete the octet, and see phosphorus is trying to complete its octet like this. So you can see octet is phosphorus is completing its octet in this.
So morning you said you will transfer that to my prepaid account.
Hey guys, are you following this? So in PCl5 you can see it is following the octet, but this time phosphorus is sharing only 1 electron. So can I say that if this bond type, okay, if this bond type is A, okay, and this bond type is B, okay, so I can say that bond energy of A type will be less than bond energy of B type, because in B type bond both elements are sharing its electron. In A type bond only phosphorus is sharing an electron, so that bond would be relatively weak. And Sidgwick says that this is observed practically, hence we can say that phosphorus is the only one which is sharing electron and it is not chlorine. Okay, and he said that we can write this type of a bond as a singlet bond. So this is a single half arrow. When we write full arrow, it is coordinate covalent bond, right? If we showcase half arrow, that means it is singlet bond. So it is showing singlet bonds with 2 chlorines and single bonds with 3 chlorines. So this representation is the singlet bond. So Sidgwick says that there would be singlet bonds existing between phosphorus and chlorine. Similarly, if you write it for SF6 also, there are different energies that might be coming. So sulfur. Okay, so what you can say that there are only 2 bonds which are single bonds and rest 4 bonds are singlet bonds. Okay, so as per his theory, if this is a singlet bond, and I call this as a type A, okay, and this is a single bond which is type B. So as per his theory, bond energy of A must be weak than bond energy of B, correct? But unfortunately, practically bond energy of A was same as bond energy of B. So I think this was not valid in SF3. So that's why I told you that Sedgwick's rule, although it looks very satisfying to completion of octet, but it was not valid in all the cases. Only it was seen for the case of PCL5. In the case of SF6, it is not shown. In objective type questions, it may ask that according to Sedgwick rule, find the number of singlet bonds. So in PCL5, how many singlet bonds are there? 2 of them. In SF6, 4 of them. If it is IF7, guys, how many you will have? Correct. So it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So total, these are the total 7 bond representations, out of which only one is single bond, rest all are singlet bonds. This is how it is: F, 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 and F. So this is the only single bond that is present, rest all are singlet bonds. Okay, again, but this is also not valid in terms of bond energies. So practically speaking, the only match Sedgwick was found was for PCL5, not others. Okay. So this was the Sedgwick's singlet rule, okay, which was not great theory, but somewhere it was showing some closeness towards octet configuration. Okay. Next, he also built up a concept of something called covalency. So that is called as, okay, Sedgwick's concept of covalency. Concept of covalency. Here he says that covalency is the number of valence shell electrons. Covalence is the number of valence shell electrons that can be shared to form covalent bond. It can be shared to form covalent bond. Like in case of PCL5, if you see, the configuration of phosphorus is neon 3s2 3p3, correct? And to form the covalent bond, it has to make all of them as single electrons. So this is 3d, 3p, and 3s. So one of the electron must be present in D so that everything becomes single. Hence the covalency is 5. So to show the covalency, you need to make all the valence electrons into unpaired electrons, and accordingly you will see there has 5 unpaired electrons. Hence the covalency of phosphorus in PCl5 is 5. Okay, I think that is clear now. Suppose if I ask you what is the covalency of nitrogen in HNO3, what will be the covalency of nitrogen in HNO3? Please tell me. Okay, check out in the example. In PCl5, phosphorus has to make 5 links. That means it should have 5 unpaired electrons. So it is utilizing all the 5 valence electrons. So hence its covalency is 5. Now, on a similar lines, I want you to tell me what is the covalency of nitrogen in HNO3. Yes, correct. Okay, because it can make maximum of 4 bonds only. So covalency of nitrogen in HNO3 is 4. Okay, because you can see that it will make one dative bond with oxygen, double bond O here, one O and H here. We count this dative bond as only single bond, understood? Hence there are only 4 bonds. So the covalency for nitrogen is 4. Okay, and that is the maximum covalency of all the group elements. I mean in the period elements, sorry. That means carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine. They can give a maximum covalency of 4. Minimum they can give 1. Okay. So what is the covalency of oxygen in water? How much? 2. So only 2 are being involved. HO3 plus, NH4 plus. Right, correct. So HO3 plus you'll have 3, NH4 plus it will be 4. Okay. So this is something called the covalency. So wherever you come across this term, you should be very clear what is being asked. In PCl5, there are 5 valence shell electrons and all of them are shared. Hence its covalency is 5. In HNO3, 4 valence bonds are formed. Hence the covalency is 4. And in H2O, there are 2 covalent bonds are formed. Hence the covalency of oxygen is 2. H3O plus, the covalency of oxygen is 3 because it is making 3 covalent bonds. And in NH4 plus, it is 4. Have you got the essence of it? One thing, you have understood the interpretation of coordinate covalent bonds, right? So I hope you have understood the interpretation of coordinate covalent bonds. That is, when I write HNO3, you know that I can write that as double bond O, dative bond O, single bond O and H, and this dative bond can actually be written in the bond line structure as N, double bond O, single bond O with minus and plus. Hannah, you have understood this, right? This representation becomes very useful when we learn something called resonance. So this is what we'll learn it now. So we have come across some part of resonance already, when we were discussing thermodynamics. Let us see what it is. Okay. See, resonance is nothing but delocalization of pi bonded electrons. Pi bonded electrons. Okay. What is pi bond? We are yet to come, but I think you more or less you know what is a pi bond already. So I'm taking that as an leverage, and hopefully that you understand what is pi bond. I'm going ahead. Okay. Suppose if you have O3 molecule, right? In O3 molecule, I can write structure as O double bond O, dative bond O, with one lone pair here, two lone pairs here, and three lone pairs here. This was the structure we just learned. What if I fix this oxygen 1, 2, and 3? Imagine like I'm fixing that oxygen and pinning them on this board. When I pin them on this board, 3 oxygens, which were 1, 2, 3, I can change the bond structure as double bond on this side and dative bond on this side. Nothing much have changed, right? Got it? So both the representation are absolutely correct. Okay. So when you can represent Lewis structure, when you can represent a compound in multiple Lewis structures, those multiple Lewis structures are called resonating structures. So these two are two ways of representing Lewis structures, and both of them are resonating structures of each other. Now same if I write in simple bond line structure, I'll write this as O double bond O, single bond O with positive and negative charge. Okay, and O, single bond O and double bond O, with this being positive and this being negative. Okay, 1 second. Maybe उसको थोड़ा गर्म पानी से गागल कराओ, करता है maybe छींक मारो ना जब से. Okay guys, so you can see these two structures, structure A and structure B, these two are called resonating structures. Resonating are also known as canonical structures. Okay. Got it. Now, if you see the bond characteristic in both the structures, okay, you see the bond characteristic of O3, what we have found is bond length, bond energy, and bond order of these three. First, I'll write this as O, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 oxygen. Okay. So in structure A, if you check out, okay, O1 and O2 has double bond. Let me call that as O1 O2 bond here and O2 O3 bond here. I'm analyzing these two. O1 O2 has a double bond. Let me call this as length 1 and length 2. So I can say that length 1 is less than length 2 bond length wise. Same way, if you see the bond energy, if I call this as energy 1 and energy 2, so obviously energy 1 required will be more than that of energy 2. Because bond length is small, that means it requires more energy to break. Bond order means number of bonds. There are 2 bonds here, there is 1 bond here. Okay. Okay guys, you understood that? Achha, so that means A and B signifies there should be 2 different bond energies, 2 different bond lengths, right? But in practice, okay, you would see that bond length 1 and 2 are same and bond energy 1 and 2 are same. Okay, that means it is neither existing as A, it is not existing as B, it is existing as C. And the C will be something like this, O, O and O, with some bond character here and some bond character here. And equal amount of bond character on both the sides, with this lone pairs intact and this lone pairs intact. Correct? And this, in this both the structures, both of the central oxygen is always positive. But in 2 structures, this oxygen 1 has positive ones and 0 ones. I mean negative ones and 0 ones. So I can write that as minus half, and this side I can write it as plus half. Sorry, minus half. Average bond order would be equal to 1.5. So it is not exactly 1 or 2, it is somewhere in between. And A and B are called resonating structures. Okay. Hey, you guys understood this? So in short, let me write the conclusion here. A, B are called resonating structures. A, B are called resonating structures. C is called resonance hybrid. Okay. And resonance is seen when a molecule can be represented with multiple Lewis structures. Last thing, when charge is dispersed, the stability of molecule increases. I think this is the same thing we learned in thermodynamics as well. This is the driving force for resonance. These are the important catch points which you need to understand. Okay. So guys, your task now is to do all this, draw resonance structures. Okay. Resonance structures. Next, hybrid structures. Hybrid structure. Okay. Showcasing charge. Showcasing charge, bond order on following species. Right. Work this for CO3 2 minus, SO4 2 minus, PO4 3 minus, NO3 minus, NO2 minus, ClO4 minus, ClO3 minus. I think that's it. Try on all of these cases. Okay, so this is the assignment. You have to finish this. I think I forgot one more, CO2. Try this also. Got it? So try this, how the hybrid looks like how I written this for O3. This is the hybrid structure. So first you have to write the canonical structures, then write the hybrid structures for all of them. After writing the hybrid structure, you would be able to figure out a lot of reasoning for it. Okay, so how the stability is, how the bond length is, bond order is. Okay, so everything can be explained. Yeah guys, you guys got this? So this ends the covalent part of this. If you just go back here, so we started off with these 2 points here today. So we learned about formal charge and all the Lewis dot structures. Right. So next session we'll be learning about VSEPR theory, hybridization, VBT. MOT will take some time.